are some lies in our science books. Taught it for 15 years. Even though I'm not teaching it anymore, I still like to study. It's so many neat things to learn. We're going to cover some of that tonight.
Perception is being managed. We are being steered and guided by a hidden hand.
The whole world has been duped by the media that is not real.
Smart thinking, possible time traveler, smart thinking.
That night, boom, contact memory.
And then, Alex, if you don't agree, you'll be sent to a re-education camp.
Just because I'm old doesn't mean I've lost my touch with the ladies.
A lot of people here tonight felt like they lost. You know why?
Now, experts are suggesting that we're in a golden age of shape-shifting reptilian sightings. Now, why is that?
I was, and still am, a huge conspiracy guy. I literally ran out of new tin hat topics to research.
It was most definitely not capable of melting steel.
Then I would be a crackpot if I thought that was the case.
Thought that was the case.
Are we ready? Are we done talking about sandwiches?
I mean, not forever, but yes, in this next hour and a half, yes.
Hour and a half? All right. Welcome to the Hypothetical Institute, a podcast about conspiracies.
My name is Luke.
My name is Salty.
And I'm Cam. How are we, gents? Lockdown 3.0?
Yeah, it's good. I've got a pineapple that I'm eating today.
Nice.
So far, so good to me.
So this week we're going to be talking about Korean Airlines Flight 007, which was a plane that crashed over Russia, or the USSR, in 1983 at the height of the Cold War. And I guess because of when it happened or where it happened, there are a lot of conspiracy theories about what actually went down.
Yeah, there's lots to this one, isn't there? There's a few bits and pieces, right down to just every facet seems to be contested in some way.
So I watched an air crash investigations piece about this.
Oh yeah.
Although it was sold to me as air crash investigations, and then when they're it was still a Discovery Channel thing or whatever, or something like that. But when they actually played the name of the show, it was actually called Unsolved Histories.
Right.
Okay.
Which I felt like I was tricked because I was looking for more of a focus on the air crash investigation. I wasn't as interested in the history. But they're like, we're going to get to the bottom of what happened with this plane. And they're like, we've put together a team of mustachioed experts.
Oh yeah,
to work this out. And they're like, we've got an air crash investigator. We have the Russian air crash investigator. We have the pilot who shot down the plane, and we have a historian and a space engineer, an aerospace engineer. I was like, well, I feel like those two guys are sort of superfluous because you have the guy that shot down the plane, the guy that investigated it, and another proper investigator. The historian's probably not as important to working out what really happened.
Do we want to? What's the official story of what happened? Is that the best place to start with this?
Yeah, I think maybe. So it's 1983. It was a flight from New York to Seoul via Anchorage, and so to get there, they had to sort of fly over Russia, but they go around Russia because tensions were high.
Yeah, so the path was kind of nearish Russia, but not towards Russia.
Unfortunately, when they went to do this, something went wrong, and they ended up flying over Russian airspace.
Did they go in and out of airspace as well? I remember that was one of the the Russians oh, it's gone now, we don't need to shoot it down, and then they're like, oh, it's back. I think just the shape of the space.
Yeah, because they're going over the coast, the easternmost coast of Russia. So Kamchatka's the most eastern part of the Soviet Union or Russia or whatever. Yeah. And there was apparently some sort of military base there. I guess they had an outpost there because, it's the closest bit to America. It's the bit that Sarah Palin could see from her house. So they were a bit sensitive about spy planes. Anyway, the plane does go off its proposed course, deviates from its course by about 15 degrees. So it goes a fair way off where it's supposed to be. Ends up going over Russian airspace. They send up some fighter jets to intercept, and then they determine that it's a spy plane and they shoot it down. And I think 269 people on board died, including strident anti-communist congressman Larry McDonald.
Just a quick note. I'm looking at kind of a curved map that kind of, accounts for the fact that the Earth is round. Or lies about the fact the Earth is round, depending on your view. Seoul or Korea is much higher than I always thought. Like, it's actually not that far from Alaska when you're looking at it this way. Like, in my mind, if someone said, is Korea closer to Alaska or Australia, I'd immediately say Australia.
Yeah.
It's one of those tricky ones.
And I've been there, so, I mean, I should have looked at a map when I was going. Anyway.
So that's basically the story. They shoot the plane down, and it crashes into the ocean. And then I guess it's from there that things get complicated.
Well, the first question is, why did they get so off course? And I guess there's still a lot of, they shot it down because it was a spy plane, but there's still a lot of people that are like, no, it was because they were spying. It was part of, that wasn't a mistake. They were there to do a little spy thing as well.
Well, so I guess what happens after it crashes is that then the Soviets sort of are quite... They throw up some obstacles to the investigators. The Americans want to come over and investigate the crash, and the Soviets are not keen on that happening. There is like an international investigation team that heads out there, and the Russian Navy are like obstructing them. I think they eventually find the black box recorders, and they just go straight into some Soviet general's safe and stay there for quite a long time. And they can't find a lot of wreckage or a lot of remains either, which will then lead into some more conspiracy theories down the track.
And the Russians denied they had any of it, right, for a long time.
Yeah.
Like, they didn't say, oh yeah, we found the black boxes, but you're not having them. Yeah. It was just like, yeah, there was nothing there.
Niet.
I guess this is one of the ones where it's not like a UFO or something where we can say this is all the crazy theories and then this is what actually happened. It was a weather balloon. So the accepted theory of what happened is that there's like different ways that the autopilot can be set on the plane.
Yeah.
One of them is to ping off like stations that are scattered around the world. And another one is to just base it on magnets.
Yeah.
Like a magnetic direction thing. And they think that they have accidentally set it on the wrong one.
INS instead of whatever the other one is.
The other one, yeah.
And so they've been going, and then they've gotten off course. And I don't know how accurate this is. I read that one explanation is that for why they didn't realize they were off course is that maybe it's almost certain that like the co-pilot or other people in the flight crew realized they were off course, but that there was a culture in the airline of like not questioning the pilot.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and that's become like there's been books written about that kind of thing, and specifically talking about Korean airlines, right?
Yeah.
And I guess the different cultures and how they approach hierarchies in the cockpit. You don't question your superiors, but we've talked about this surely, I think. Anyway, and I think that's.
So I do feel like if you were to be at the height of the Cold War and flying over, the reason your flight path doesn't take you the most direct route is because you're avoiding flying into Soviet airspace.
Yep.
I think that you would still maybe pipe up, even if you're like, oh, this isn't the done thing.
Yeah. No, I see. I think there's probably, again, it's a cultural thing that is quite ingrained. That you just wouldn't.
The thing is, though, people are like, they must have noticed, because there were a lot of ways to realise that they're off course. For one thing, they could have told that they were flying over land instead of over the ocean. Like that they had sensors for that would have shown that. There's various other things that would have indicated to them. That, for one thing, they weren't able to radio through to places that they should have been able to, and so they were passing their messages through a different plane.
Yeah.
And so that should have been an indicator to them that they were a little bit off course as well.
Yeah, there's no problem solving there. We've got a problem. What's causing the problem? Their solution is not to work that out, if this is the scenario.
They might have thought that they were a little bit off course, but not realised how far off course they were. Because when eventually the flight recorders and the black boxes were recovered, long after they were recovered, when the Soviets handed them over after the fall of the Soviet Union, so when the Russians handed them over, it was all very casual in the cockpit. There was no indication that they realized that they were in Soviet airspace. I did think, though, that maybe they just assumed that no one would shoot down a passenger jet.
Yeah, but you'd still know.
I think that's a bad assumption to make too, because we're not flying over Soviet airspace just in case they shoot down a passenger jet, right? Like, why do we have this rule? Unless they were not cognizant of that's why our flight path is like that. We're just doing what our flight path tells us to do.
What is there any suggestion that the recordings have been altered or faked?
Yes.
Okay, because that just dawned on me. I didn't even really think to look at that.
So, all right, let's get
everything is good in the cockpit.
I wish I could do a Russian accent because I'd like to say something about a Korean thing in a Russian.
Oh, right. Oh, that's what you're suggesting. The Russians have faked them.
Yeah.
Okay, so...
Well, I mean, because they're the ones that had the black box, right?
Yeah. I don't know if anyone has suggested that. There is a suggestion, though, that the Americans faked them. So let's get into some conspiracy theories.
Would you have said something like, good flying, comrade. How is your bibimbap?
yeah, that would have been good. Perfect.
Yeah. So one of the conspiracy theories that the Soviets have sort of put forward is that it was actually a spy plane. There weren't any people on it, and that the black boxes were planted to be found. And so they've recorded a flight of, Korean pilots being like, oh, we're having a good flight. No troubles here. Oh, whoops.
Got plenty of time to enjoy my kimchi.
Yep.
And then that's just been put there so that people will think that it was a passenger flight when in fact it really was a spy plane. And also helping that theory is the fact that they didn't find any luggage or very many human remains. They found like a couple of body parts. I think they found the body parts of a child too, which doesn't gel with it being a spy plane unless that was also all planted there. But then if you were going to do that, wouldn't you just fill the plane up with bodies?
Yeah.
Like if you're going to plant corpses on the plane.
But then you've got to get the corpses.
Yeah, and also you're probably...
The government can get corpses.
Yeah, corpses are easy to acquire, and...
I guess the US government could acquire corpses pretty easily.
Yeah, I feel like this is a spy movie trope as well. The ghost plane with the dead bodies set up to look like it was a plane crash and for some other nefarious purpose.
Is that a trope? If it isn't, everyone stop writing it and we'll write it.
Yeah.
But if you're doing that, firstly, you need to expect that the plane's going to be shot down. So it wouldn't make sense to fill up your spy plane with corpses because that's going to make things, very uncomfortable for the spies running the plane. That means you're taking a passenger jet to turn it into a spy plane, filling it with corpses, and being like, let's just fill it with corpses just in case we get shot down. There is also a suggestion, though, that maybe it was the whole thing was a setup. They wanted them to shoot it down.
Right.
And so
to start some shit.
That would make sense. But then if you were doing that, you would fill it up with corpses.
Yes.
Yeah, to make it look like they've killed a whole bunch of civilians.
Yeah. At the moment, it looks like they've killed 4 people. Now, what actually probably happened is that just the way where it's crashed, the underwater tides or whatever. What's that called? Like the currents have carried things away, and also there's crabs. So there's a lot of crabs on the seafloor in the area, and they'll just sort of eat anything.
Apparently, though, they're not going to eat the bones. The Japanese spider crabs, they just eat the flesh, so it kind of shoots down that theory.
But I think
Japanese spider crabs are a cool crab if you want to look them up.
They are pretty
listener.
cool.
So the guy that shot them down,
he's been in a lot of media.
Yeah. So I've got a quote here about the crab theory, and he's got, I heard they found the Boeing, and that's in inverted commas, when I was on Sakhalin, and even investigated it. But no one saw people there. I have, however, explained that by the fact that there are crabs in the Sea of Sakhalin, apologies for pronunciation, that immediately devour everything. I did hear that they found only a black hand and a black glove. Perhaps it was the hand of the pilot of the aircraft I shot down, which is a really dark thing to say. Even now, I cannot really believe that there were passengers on board. You cannot write off everything to the crabs. So he's still convinced it's a spy plane. He has no support of the crab theory. There are other theories as well. What happened to the bodies, right?
Yeah, so one of the theories is that maybe the plane has crashed and there have been survivors, and that the Soviets have then taken them hostage.
Yeah.
And that they're in a gulag in Siberia somewhere. And I think that a lot of family members were keen on that maybe being the case.
Yep.
But it seems like the sort of thing where, a few years later, a decade later, they hand over the black boxes. And there's sort of an apology implicit in that. If they had survivors, I don't know, maybe that would be the time when it's, it was the former regime, it wasn't them. You could say, oh, actually, we saved a bunch of people from that. It actually makes us look a little bit better because we didn't kill 269 people. We killed a bunch of people, and then these people have just been in prison. But also, I feel like someone who'd been to a Soviet gulag and had then come home at the end of their sentence might have spoken to someone and been like, oh, there were a bunch of Korean people in the gulag.
Yeah, yeah. So the abduction theory did get a lot of legs from people. There was, I think some of the American kind of the leadership thought it might have still been abducted. There's kind of hints that apparently people requested information and then it wasn't really clear if there were survivors or not based on what the Russians gave back. There's one guy who's a self-declared KGB expert. He said, they were abducted and the kids were separated from their parents and safely hidden in the orphan houses of one of the Soviet Middle Asian republics.
There's also a theory that the Soviets might have found the bodies and then just taken them.
Yeah, yeah. There's also a wind tunnel theory and a decompression theory.
Well, what's the wind tunnel theory?
I think it's similar to the decompression theory. Basically, everyone sucked out and then spat around. They got caught in a wind tunnel and then ended up in a far away place. And decompression is they got sucked out by the explosion, like in a movie.
Yeah. And
then they end up scattered around the place or in a different place to where you'd even be looking for the bodies. But one is the decompression theory. This is in a book called Izvestia, which is some of the clothes they found was zipped up. And they don't know how that could have happened, how the zipped up clothes land everywhere. I'm assuming that's just because luggage exploded, right?
Yeah. It would have been,
Wasn't it people got sucked out of them?
People's luggage. And the other thing is they did find, stuff started washing up in Japan, later. They found body parts that they couldn't explain. Well, I think, it's probably from that plane crash. And they did find some luggage around the place.
So the deliberate theory that it was deliberate is a pretty strong one as well. Because we've kind of talked about it, but there's a whole book about it. Cal 007, the cover up, which says it was all planned. Because I think the US had done a similar operation recently, and they've been caught, and that's why that part of Russia was on high alert. So that's kind of the, they're up to their tricks.
That it was like an actual airline flight, but they were also doing a little spying on the side.
Yeah.
There's also a theory that it was a targeted assassination
of Larry McDonald.
And they were also because he was one of the main anti-communists in Congress, and there were supposed to be other sort of hardcore anti-communists on the plane, but their flight had changed. But if a Soviet spy might not have gotten the news that their flight had changed last second. But they think that what could have happened is that the Soviets could have scrambled the pinging of the plane's radar so that they thought they were somewhere where they weren't. It's called meakening. And so they could have sent them off course and then shot down the plane under the pretext that they thought it was a spy plane, but they did know all along that it was an airline flight.
Yeah. There are so many suggestions in this. The old Occam's razor of they just went off course and got shot down. It just makes so much sense but it also doesn't make sense, does it? As we've discussed, so it is somewhat.
Yeah,
it's hard to get my head around what I actually think, and I think they just got off course and got shot down. But as we discussed, it was really difficult to do that.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's like there were so many indicators that they were off course, and they didn't go make any effort to correct the course.
Yeah,
but then they must have known they were off course. But then if they'd known they were off course, they would have been a little bit freaked out. But then it seems like that they were just bantering. So did they know that? If you go from that, then Occam's razor says they must have not known that they were off course, which might make more sense that their systems had been scrambled a bit by the Russians.
Oh, you think there's a scrambling going on?
That's the meakening. They send up signals that make you think you're somewhere where you're not.
Right.
So they could have made it look like they were still on course to them. But there's still other things, like you could have looked at the thing that said, "Oh, we're over land instead of over sea." Yeah. But then you might have looked at the other thing which said we're on course and been like, "Oh, well, maybe that thing's wrong. Maybe these things aren't always reliable."
Because I guess also if they had the wrong navigation system on, like they had the one that says our magnetic heading is correct, but our actual heading is not. The one that should have been telling them they weren't on course wasn't turned on because they just forgot to do it or whatever. Like, would there be, like, if no alarms are going off saying they're off course, then why would they even, like, think they were off course?
Because they would have seen they're over land at some point.
But do they look out and down the window, like down at the ground though? Like I would assume that pilots on most planes, like most big passenger jets, go completely mostly off of their instruments, right?
Yeah. So they're going off their instruments, but I think you can like confuse the radar so you think you're somewhere where you're not. But I don't know if you can confuse the thing that says, "Oh, it's ground underneath us" instead of ocean.
So they've got like a little thing that pings back up at them, I don't know, some sort of. Was that just radar though?
No.
To know what's underneath it, wouldn't that be how that works?
But if that's part of the system that like they didn't have on,
yeah,
then there's nothing to tell them that they're not over whichever one they're supposed to be over.
Yeah,
then they would just be sitting there chilling, going, "Yeah, look at that, heading's fine, we're cruising."
Yeah,
get out the bloody Yahtzee.
Yahtzee?
Stick this bitch on autopilot. Let's just.
Wait, is Yahtzee a Korean thing?
It might be.
Okay. One thing I always find funny, we're talking about looking out the windows and seeing it, and they probably didn't, is that quite often really big planes have tiny windows. And to me, that just looks comical.
Yeah.
Little tiny window, little tiny pilots, and this giant thing. So yeah, I mean, I don't know how much they see, but surely they can see something.
Yeah.
I guess they can see out in front of them to make sure there's not going to crash into a mountain.
Yeah, and like, I don't know, you're just looking around, right? Isn't that a big thing that you do as a pilot? You're just looking around?
Yeah. Well, what can you see though? Horizon.
So there is one other theory.
I guess any pilots of major aircraft out there just want to chime in and let us know what you're looking at out those tiny windows.
See out the windows, yeah.
I've just put for you guys. I've just put a picture of a plane in our group chat. That's a good example of a giant plane with tiny windows.
Yeah. See, there's no way they'd be able to look down the side of that plane and see the ground.
But you'd see ahead of you. You're looking out.
Yeah, but if you're looking out that window at a downward angle down the nose, how far, like that's so far in front of you that you'd be able to see.
I'm just bringing up some images of cockpits now and looking.
Also, there's like all this instrumentation in front of them, right? They can't get to the glass to look down the front of the nose of the plane.
No, they can definitely see it. What's the point of the window then? There's definitely a reason for the window.
So they don't crash into mountains.
Wait, sorry, I think we can leave. Let's pin this.
Okay, you're not into this,
and not circle back to it. There's no suggestion. I don't think anyone is suggesting that they could have looked out the window and seen what was beneath them.
No, but they'd see around them. I've just put another photo in our chat, and they can see even this photo is quite far back from the pilot. You can clearly see that what you're flying over.
What kind of plane is that?
hard to say. Spectacular things pilots see every day is the title of the article.
Right.
Actually, let's put a pin in it, and now we'll circle back to it, because I've just thought of something. If you can't see the ground from the cockpit through the window, why don't they put side mirrors on? So you can just look in the mirror and see. Oh, yeah, of course. Too much drag. Anyway, let's move on. There is one other theory that is a little bit complicated. So the theory is that the Soviets engaged actual spy planes, that there was an air battle over Kamchatka where they actually did shoot down real US spy planes.
Right.
But then the Americans or the Japanese have shot down this passenger plane to cover up the crash of their spy plane. So that they say, oh, this passenger plane's in the ground. You know, the Russians were shooting missiles at a plane, put it together. They shot down a passenger jet, but it was actually the Americans or the Japanese that shot it down.
Yeah, I did read a little bit about this. So there was an inference that the sound, like the way that people described the sound traveling and then what they saw was not not consistent with where it was shot down. Is that?
Yeah,
am I right?
There's that, and there's also apparently someone, like a fisherman or someone, found some wreckage from one of the weapons, or a weapon, at least in the area, which had a marking on it N3. Now, of course, as we all know, the letter N is not in the Cyrillic alphabet. So why would the Russians have N on their missile? Would make much more sense that it was on an American missile.
What was the code again? Say that again.
N3.
Ah. Surely, like, people know what codes are on what missiles, right? Russia had a SSN-3 missile. According to this missile website that I've just pulled up.
There you go. Well, sorry, fisherman, you've struck out there.
The SSN-3 is a family of turbojet-powered cruise missiles with 3 variants. Confusingly, the Western nomenclature designates the initial P5 variant with the highest number, SS-N-3C. It's an inertially guided missile. So there you go. It's just kind of really proves.
Cyrillic has like a backwards N.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe they were looking at it the wrong way.
And it does have a couple of symbols that look like they could be N's.
But also they do have a missile called the SSN-3.
N3, yeah.
Yeah, fisherman, you should have bloody Googled it before you're making yourself look like an idiot. Do you, Cam, believe any of these theories or entertain them to be plausibly true?
Oh, I don't know. It's one of those things where I feel like I think the Russians knew that they were in the wrong. It seemed like the Russians went to a lot of effort to cover things up, right?
Yeah. If they hid all what they did and then hid the wreckage, right?
Yeah, and they were going around hassling the people that were trying to investigate it. It's like that seems like the actions of the guilty party.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we know that the pilot gives many interviews, or gave many interviews. He's since passed, but he was very open about he saw it, and he said in one that he saw the lights. It looked like a Boeing, and he reported that back to the people.
And they said shoot it down.
Yeah, and they're like, nah, or they just kind of ignored him and just said to keep going.
Yeah.
But then he still doesn't believe that he shot down a passenger jet, which is probably, there's probably a reason that you'd be like, oh, nah, I actually didn't kill hundreds of people.
Yeah. Well, let's just be grateful that this isn't he wasn't the 99 Luftballons guy.
I'm going to need an elaboration on this.
The guy that saw the things on the radar saying, oh, the American missiles are coming.
Oh, yeah.
And was like, yeah, you know what? Let's just see what happens.
Or he was too drunk to
hang on.
to do anything about it.
Is that something you've actually heard, or are you just making?
Yeah, that's a theory. I think we discussed it.
Stereotype.
We discussed it on the show once. That he was just drunk, and he said, like he made up the story. Oh no, I knew.
Yeah, I'm the hero that saved the world.
I certainly wasn't smashing vodkas. all day because I'm bored looking at a fucking radar that nothing happens. It's the Cold War. Let's get some heat. Some bloody heat into this war. All this heat's coming from the vodka that I'm drinking. So, what does the 99 Luft balloons have to do with it?
That song's based on that whole thing.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the 99 Luft balloons are, the red balloons that ping the radar that makes them think the missiles are coming.
Okay, this is news.
That's what the song's about.
Really?
Yeah.
Is this common knowledge?
You thought it was just a fun song about balloons, like they're at a circus or something. But it's like, are some of these balloons shaped like a sausage dog?
I guess I never thought about it. I
knew it was like a war song. I didn't really know what it was about.
So the guitarist noticed that balloons were being released. It is about balloons. As he watched them move towards the horizon, he noticed them shifting and changing shapes. Looked like strange spacecraft. Then he thought about what might happen if they floated over the Berlin Wall to the Soviet sector. So it is literally about balloons.
Yeah.
He just smoked some weed and was watching balloons and going, look at these shapes. Fuck. Oh, what if we trick the Russians with them? So it's not about that incident.
It's about what would happen if that happened, which would be that incident.
Wow.
But the bad outcome. Anyway, what do you reckon, Robbo?
So a direct translation of the title is sometimes given as 99 air balloons. But the song became known as Red Balloons because it's better.
Yeah.
There you go. There's a bit of a shoey there. So I believe, and I read this essay that was completely over my head, and I actually, here's a little insight into like how spiteful I am. I read this essay and it was just so needlessly confusing, and like it just really was in words all the things I hate about academia of just really just going too hard on big words when you can just say the thing quite easily. And so I looked up the people that wrote it. And I looked one up on Rate My Professor to see if his students hated him.
Yeah.
He's got a 2.8 out of 5
Oh, damn.
rating.
That's average.
No, if you had a 2.8 out of 5 rating on anything, you'd be like, fuck, that sucks.
You wouldn't want it to be your Uber rating.
Oh, no. I was shocked to see mine was like 4.7, which apparently is bad. I'm like, who's rating me a 4? Or less than a 5, and then I remembered all the times that I get drunk and ask to take over the stereo. and I went through a period of playing like 21 Savage songs.
I remember when I got my first non-5 rating, and I could fucking tell who did it because I had,
what did you do?
A perfect 5. Didn't do anything. No, it wasn't drunk. I was in Rotterdam,
right,
in the Netherlands. And I think that maybe I went to get in the wrong door or something. And then, sorry. And then I got in the right one. And then next minute,
this guy's like, fuck this guy.
I went from a 5 to a 4.9.
All right, wrong door, Harry. Let's bloody bump this guy down the score.
I even listened to his weird cowboy music.
Maybe he wanted you to put on 21 Savage.
Yeah, maybe. Anyway.
So just one comment on Rate My Professor about this guy, and I'll get to the actual contents of the essay in a second. This one was, he is a weirdo Star Trek geek. It's got 3 E's. Maybe you should have paid more attention in class. Who wishes he was Indiana Jones when he's more like John Wayne Gacy. Which is brutal.
Yeah, and can you see the star rating that's associated with that?
No, I didn't copy that one out. It wasn't good. You don't call your teacher John Wayne Gacy and then give them a high rating.
Well, I thought it might be like the comedy festival where you get that and then it's like 4 stars.
Well, a lot of people were saying his class is really easy. And so just turn up and you'll get an easy pass because he doesn't really pay attention. So yeah. Anyway, part of this essay. So this essay was all about. It's kind of the name of it was something to do with nuclear coincidences, where there's so many things happening. This cauldron of coincidence that it just makes it makes it just unbelievable. It's the thrust of this fucking 20-page essay.
Yeah,
20 pages.
So you could have said it in one sentence.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, stuff happens. Sometimes it's a coincidence.
Yeah.
Anyway, they spend a lot of time talking about 007, which we haven't talked about. So the flight number was 007, and whether or not the Russians thought that was like, oh, this flight number's got 007 attached. It's clearly a spy
They're
plane.
taking the piss.
Are these writers?
No, the Russians are like, these fucking American spies are taking the piss.
Yeah, and then the next part of that is, well, maybe you'd call it 007 to take the piss because no one would, oh my God, you wouldn't call your spy plane 007.
Yeah,
Like-
it was a reverse piss take.
Yeah. So I'll read a little bit from this essay. One can suppose that 007 was an instance of what the spy most fears, the recurrent nightmare, the capacity of his unconscious to betray him into letting slip that he has taken every conceivable rational precaution to conceal. What the Soviet Union read as a conscious provocation could, given the same attribution of motives, be taken to be a lapsus, an involuntary revelation of the mechanism that undoes all loyalties in the paranoid universe of stealth, where each side is trying to determine its strategies in terms of what it can see the other side seeing about itself. Hallucinatory effects and effects of coincidence acquire, in this space, uncanny power to become basis for fateful decisions. 20 fucking pages of that. That's why I looked this guy up, to find out if he's a dick. But there is some evocativeness to that writing, I'll give him that. But yeah. 007. What do you think about that?
Yeah, no, I think that they might be right about the coincidence thing. I think just a lot of things went wrong. I think it was the Russian aircraft investigator on the thing I watched was like, look, the Koreans, they fucked up, the Americans fucked up, we fucked up. It's just a bunch of people making mistakes and it all just came together.
Yeah. Yeah. Salty, what do you think?
Yeah, I think it was just a big fuck up.
All right. So we've got a pin in something. Cam, you weren't sure if we're going to circle back to it.
I know. I think we're done with this, but unless you have a conclusion.
Well, I'm just looking
I
up...
circled backward and said they should put side mirrors on so they can look out and look down.
Yeah. So I am looking at some...
Put a periscope on the front of the plane.
747 things, and there's not much they can really see, I think.
No.
That's probably
I think
fair.
they can see the ground when they're approaching it to land, but I think from like 30,000 feet or whatever, all they'd be able to see is like the very far distance.
Just
in the
put the
right.
plane upside down for a second.
There is a...
like that Denzel Washington movie.
Do a little loop-de-loop.
Yeah.
A little barrel roll. So there is also a thing called sick air syndrome, where there's not enough air circulating through the tiny space of the cockpit, and they're just in there for so long that they just start getting elevated carbon dioxide and getting all like bad at flying and losing all their functions and thinking powers. Jeez, who's losing their thinking powers today? To get bad at flying.
So, Salty, Robbo, me, I think we've tackled Korean Airlines Flight 007.
Yeah, I think this is another one where there's lots of little moving parts, and you could probably spend a long time discussing one.
Yeah, you could even write books about all of them.
Yeah, but you'd be stretching it pretty thin because Russia just shot down a plane that had gotten off course.
Well, Robbo, where can people find us online?
Hypothepod on Twitter. Hypothetical Institute, where if you're listening to this on a podcast app and you want to listen to it in a different podcast app, you could do that by searching Hypothetical Institute in a different one. Hypotheticalinstitute.com. Do we have that?
Yep.
Does it have that in front of it?
Just try them. Just try them out.
Try both ways. You're in lockdown if you're in Melbourne, so you got a bit of free time. So Cam, where do people find you?
And also, we're on Patreon.
Oh yeah, we're on Patreon.
And thank you to our Cooked $33 sponsors, Tammy and Vanessa.
Thank you. Okay, so there's no the in the website.
Okay, no the website.
Hypotheticalinstitute.com.
Cool. And we've got cookedunits.com?
Yep. Take you to our merch page.
Take you to some merch.
Robbo, where can they find you?
At ourlovetime.com. I don't really have too much coming up to plug, so, just go to those.
Salty?
At Saltmarsh on Instagram and Twitter, and andrewsaltmarsh.com for everything else.
You back on the high seas, Salty, I see?
Yeah, I've been doing a bit of Sea of Thieves streaming.
Cool. How's that going?
Good.
Nice.
Have you captured some booty?
Yeah, all the booty, mate.
I bet you have. And you can find me at Sextonheimer on Twitter. Gather Around Me is my other podcast. Yeah, Nah, Pass Around is my radio show about the far right on 3CR. Check it out.
Nice one. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Don't worry about a thing, except if all our world leaders are alien reptilians. I said don't worry about a thing, except maybe the fluoride in our water supply contains mind-altering drugs. Don't worry about a thing, except whether or not Port Arthur was a false flag operation in which to disarm Australia. I said don't worry about a thing. I accept you can definitely hear John Lennon say I buried Paul at the end of Strawberry Fields Forever. Ooh, don't worry about a thing, except not only did Bush do 9/11, but he also keeps the planes out in Area 51, which, let's not forget where all of the aliens are. Don't worry about a thing, except Donald Trump is clearly a woman and you're just blind if you can't see that. Why don't you open your eyes?